Okay, so how do you know that someone is a narcissist? Because that's a strong label to put on someone. And I feel like we come into contact with so many people, throughout our life. And if you kind of deem someone a narcissist, then it's really, they're kind of like an undesirable. And for myself, if someone is deemed a narcissist, I don't want anything to do with them. And I certainly tell people, don't mess with that person because what we know from these narcissistic people is that it's patterns of this, emotionally, physically, um, mentally abusive behavior, and really it's a detriment to people and society. So we don't want to go anywhere near them. But it's like, how do we know if someone is a narcissist? Because I'm meeting people all the time, and you think it's like, okay, just because someone's mean to you, maybe yelled at you, and then didn't apologize and showed no empathy, like, does that make them a narcissist? Maybe, I don't know. And so I've been really wrestling with that concept and that idea of is someone deemed a narc if they fit all the character traits and the attributes? If there's like 10 boxes and you check each box and you're like, okay, they're a narcissist, then you're a narcissist. And even that term narcissist, I think it's too it's not suitable. And I've said this before. I mean, I like the term undesirable or monster or terrible person. and I've given the metric, the number of like 25% of the population is narcissistic. And that's a huge amount of the population. But you have to think of, like, is this kind of behavior, like, is this a spectrum, or is it very clear? Is it, because if someone is a narcissist, if you give them that label and that term, you think it's okay, it's a very narrow window and it's just this amount of people. But then if you give people the term terrible individual, wow, it really opens up. So, what are some like real character traits and attributes that we can actually tie to these people to really make the determination? Because, like, I'm dealing with someone right now where, they don't necessarily show the traits of, like, they're not gaslighting. They don't do they don't have that, like, narcissist story where they're always like, the narcissist are always telling these delusional stories. There's not a ton of manipulation and lying. There's no triangulation of trying to, like, triangulate people against one another. So none of those behaviors are present. But what's interesting is kind of the general theme of these types of people is that this person certainly lacks empathy. And they have, they kind of show a repeated pattern of like getting really flustered and then taking out their angst and their anger on people around them. And, basically relieving their stress and pressure and tension by being mean to people and kind of like cutting people down. And obviously we know, that we all make mistakes, and, like, I might yell and be mean, but then if what really separates the narcissist from from people who just generally making mistakes is the fact that you can come to the table and apologize and really be emotionally aware. And that's another thing that this person kind of has going, is just like a lack of emotional awareness. And so then, you ask yourself the question, there's a lot of people like this. And you think, it's like, okay, so just because somebody does this now, are they a narcissist? Are they an undesirable person? Are they someone that you, like, just do not want to deal with? And I think you really have to bring a few more factors into it. And obviously empathy is a big one. And the ability to own your mistakes and the ability to understand how your actions affect other people. Because if you're going around day after day, getting bent out of shape, yelling at people, cutting people down, really depositing negativity into people, and there's no lack of remorse or even sense of understanding that what you're doing is affecting people in a negative way, I think that's a big red flag. And so I would say let's just narrow it down to like 3 checkbox, So let's start with empathy, and we'll kind of lump that into like empathy and the inability to be aware of how your emotions are affecting people. The next one I would say is this a repeated pattern? Because that is one of the weaknesses of the narcissist people, is if this is something that happens day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, and if this is something that you can look back on and say 20 years ago this person was doing this, I would say that then yes, we just check the other box. This is a pattern of behavior. So there's no empathy, and there's a lack of understanding of emotion. There's a definite pattern of behavior. Then the next thing I would say is this person manipulating and controlling people? That's the big thing with the narcissist. And I think that's where you can really draw the line with these people. And you can think, okay, this person has a lack of empathy. They're doing this day in and day out. And ultimately, is all that culminating to controlling and manipulating people? And in this situation, from what I've observed with this individual, is it's absolutely controlling and manipulating people. And what it's doing is they're causing people to have to always be on guard around them, because they don't know when this person is just going to fly off the handle and start depositing a lot of negativity on them. And so what it leads to is everyone having to change their behavior when this person's around. And that is definitely a big form of manipulation. That's like a standard, that's like a big part of the cult mentality. And the cult behavior is people changing their own behaviors to suit somebody else. And so, those three things, when you apply just that 3 checklists to, a lot of these people in society and the people that we come across, then yeah, that 25% of people within society being a narcissist, having narcissistic character traits and qualities, yeah, that's a realistic number. And, I really feel like the term narcissist leaves a lot on the table. It's too broad, and it's nondescript. We need something that really tells people that, these are monsters. These are terrible people. These are people that will harm you. And, I don't know if we're going to get a term that gives us that better definition. I don't think we will, because ultimately all of this is coming from, psychology and neuroscience and mental health professionals. That's, everyone is leaning on that profession to save them from this problem. And, that's where I want to just present the idea of it's just everyday people solving everyday problems. And we all have this problem of dealing with these types of people in society. And, what terminology and what actions and what can we do just as regular people to fix this problem and solve the problem for ourselves? And so, yeah, we can take what the mental health professionals are saying and we can learn from that, because there's a lot of good. And I've certainly learned a lot from these psychiatrists and psychologists that are on YouTube talking about narcissism. Yeah, obviously. But I feel like there's so much more to learn just from you and me, just everyday people. I don't go to therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a guy that had a problem with a narcissist for 40 years. And I just thought, I got to figure out how to solve this problem or it's going to kill me. I mean, that was the bottom line. And so now, I solved that problem for myself, but now I have this vision and this knowledge and it's like the rose-colored glasses are off, and now I'm seeing all these people, and now I'm able to observe the behavior. And so, yeah, you come into contact with someone who's, treating people like shit, and, making everyone have to change their behavior, and ultimately, manipulating people. And so then you think, yeah, that's a lot of people that I know, and a lot of people you come into contact with. So, maybe there's more than 25% of the population is this way. I don't know. But at the end of all of this, the end of the day, the root of this is we are trying to protect ourselves and the people we care about. And if you're observing a situation like this, and it's key to observe it and to try to understand it, and then offer at least offer a life vest to the people that are in it. And it can come from, just some simple enlightenment, because a lot of times when people are in these relationships and they're really in the narcissistic abuse, they're fully blinded. The blinders are on, and they're just going to make excuses. That's what I get a lot when I see these types of relationships and the people are fully in it. And I'll be like, man, like, you ought to consider, getting out of this. This person's treating you really bad, whatever. It's like all you get are excuses. So I think one thing that we're going to have to figure out is how to subtly implant an idea into someone's mind. Because, it's just like when I've tried to help my friends out who have drug addictions. You'll tell them, like, oh, drugs are bad for you, you shouldn't do drugs, all this stuff. But it's ultimately, they're not going to quit doing drugs until they make that decision. And I think the strategy is how you implant an idea in someone's mind and let that idea grow, and ultimately let that consume their ability to make the right decision. And I think that's the best strategy, because it just takes time, and hopefully the people will come around. And so, if you find yourself questioning, are these people that I'm meeting, I'm associating with, that I'm maybe in a relationship with, are they narcissists? Are they undesirable people? Are they terrible people? Are they monsters? Try just really simple. The empathy and the emotional awareness, that's a huge one. Is it a pattern? Does this happen over and over again? And then, the third one, is it manipulating people to ultimately to bend to their will? And I think if those three boxes get checked, yeah, you're dealing with a narcissist. And I think this person that I'm thinking of, yeah, I think they're narcissists. What do you think? Tell me what you think. And that may be too broad. I don't know. Maybe we need, maybe we need a really specific kind of category for all these people to fall into. I don't know. I'm just a guy that's trying to figure all this out. And, I feel like I've come a long way from just being the whipping post to a narcissist to now having the ability to see these behaviors and then describe them and share them. So I'm optimistic. I feel like the tide is turning. I feel like the good people will actually have their day. Anyway, but I hope this was helpful, and really, comment and tell me what you think. Was I off here? Was this accurate? Because a lot of this it's like I can learn so much from what you have to say too. So feel free, just drop a line. Anyway, I'm going to get to it, and I appreciate your time. And as always, have a good day, and I'll catch you in the next one.